Mets Managerial Madness is finally over as a familiar face returns to Flushing. This is Met Network News for Friday, November 1st, 2019. Hey there, Mets faithful, and welcome to Met Network News for Friday, November 1st, 2019. And since it is November 1st, that means our Met League winter season is officially underway. If you haven't yet joined us as a member, we'd urge you to do so. Just go to our homepage at metleague.tv, click on that join banner that you might see at the top right of the page, and pick a membership plan. If you join us as a premium, gold, or platinum member, you can start competing against your fellow fans in our fantasy and sim leagues. You can also earn entries into our prize drawings. We hope to hold prize drawings on a weekly, monthly, and annual basis for valuable prizes. So join in the fun. The second biggest news that broke today, in addition to Met League TV launching and our Met League season launching, is the Mets managerial search. The Managerial Madness, which lasted 29 days, is finally over. That's right. Nearly a month after canning Mickey Calloway, the Mets have finally found his replacement, and it is Carlos Beltran, the former Mets great, who will be returning to Flushing in a managerial capacity in 2020. Carlos was not our first choice. I had kind of prioritized experience. I wanted to ideally see a candidate that not only managed in the big leagues, but succeeded in the big leagues. That was my top criteria, so Carlos was not my top choice. Like many, if not most Met fans, I kind of wanted to see Joe Girardi at the helm because I thought he offered the best combination of experience and success at the major league level, along with, baseball knowledge and the ability to kind of manage a clubhouse as well as manage in New York and handle all the media responsibilities and all of that, all that managing in New York entails, basically. But alas, he ends up in Philly, and I basically thought as soon as Girardi ended up with the Phillies, the Mets search would come down to two candidates, Eduardo Perez and Carlos Beltran. I kind of placed Perez a little bit above Beltran in my pecking order because Perez did have some coaching and managerial experience. He actually won a Manager of the Year award in Puerto Rico, for what that's worth. But I'm really, really happy with the choice of Carlos Beltran. I'm a huge Carlos Beltran fan. Honestly, I think you can argue that he is one of the top players to ever put on a Mets uniform. Some might even argue that, he was the best all-around player to ever don a Mets uniform. That's an argument for another day. But I'm very, very happy. I think most of the fan base will be happy to welcome Carlos back, and I'm excited to see him, back in Flushing and back in a Mets uniform this coming spring training. One of the things that's heartening to see is the amount of former teammates that have come forward with great words of praise for Carlos Beltran and his effect on a clubhouse. One of these players was Carlos Correa of the American League champion Houston Astros. This is tweets from Eric Boland, who covers the Yankees. He said, "I asked Carlos Correa about Beltran before the World Series. Beltran has so much baseball knowledge it's hard to explain. I feel he's going to help the young guys on that team understand the game better, look for things they've never imagined they should look for. He's a game changer." Carlos also received a ringing endorsement from Reggie Jackson, of all people. While Reggie certainly wasn't a teammate of Carlos, the two developed a close bond with each other, working as special assistants in the Yankees front office. Mr. October's quoted as saying, "He's either going to manage now or a year or two from now. He's going to be selected because he is desirable. He is a desirable character and personality in person, and he was a great player." He goes on to say that there is a certain etiquette that you learn from being around for 20 years in the major leagues like Carlos has. There is a right way to use the analytics and have them implemented into the game, and I think he's got that understanding. I think he's got just enough old school and new school to understand it. Andy Martino picks up on this theme on SNY's Mets blog, noting that Beltran is close with both Brian McCann and Carlos Gomez. Now, these two had a famous dispute at home plate some years back over old school versus new school baseball etiquette. And Martino writes, on many occasions during Gomez's career, after he angered an opponent over some perceived violation of the game's unwritten rules, he would wake the following morning to a text from Beltran, gently explaining what had happened and how to make it better. Neither scolding nor indulgent, Beltran knew how to transcend overheated conversations about bat flips and pimped homers, and help people seek empathy and middle ground. He could bridge clubhouse divides, both philosophical and ethnic, and bring teammates together. This would seem to be Carlos's greatest positive as a managerial candidate, his ability to relate to players and even heal clubhouse divides and relate to different kinds of baseball players. It may be that the Mets even become a more attractive destination for free agents, given his reputation among players. But obviously his greatest negative remains his lack of experience in the dugout. We will soon come to know whether Carlos is equally as effective at putting a lineup together, or managing a bullpen, or a pitching staff, and handling the day-to-day activities of a Major League Baseball manager. And in our latest episode of Met Fans Behaving Badly, we give you this. Unfortunately, a small group of fans today took to Twitter and the airwaves to criticize the hiring of Carlos Beltran as the latest Mets manager by bringing up that infamous called strike three. That's right. As most of you remember, Carlos Beltran took a called strike three on a wicked curveball by Adam Wainwright in the 2006 National League Championship Series to end that series for the Mets, ending the postseason of a Mets team that many of us fans believed could win the World Series. Many Met fans were very, very, hostile and unforgiving toward Beltran after that moment. And apparently, even in 2019, a mere 13 years later, still haven't gotten over it. So my message to you, if you are one of these fans, 2 words basically for you: just stop. I mean, come on, it's been 13 years. You should be over this moment by now. The Mets have actually been to the postseason since that point. They've been to the World Series since that point. I can understand still waking up in a sweat, seeing Matt Harvey on the mound in the 9th inning in that infamous game against the Royals in the World Series. But please, don't dwell too much on the past. And besides which, as I mentioned before, you're ignoring the fact that Beltran was really one of the greatest players to ever put on the uniform for the Mets. Anyone that kind of holds that grudge should take into account how much he did to get the Mets to that position, how much he contributed to those teams in 06, 07, and 08, all of which had very difficult endings. But Beltran was the star of those teams. He was the guy that carried the ball club often. So really, it's time to kind of move on past that point. I hope that we can all kind of, come together and get behind this choice, at least in the beginning. Now, do I know whether he can manage? No. I mean, no one knows whether he can actually manage a baseball club. He has 0 dugout experience outside of being a clubhouse leader as a player. Hopefully he will select an experienced bench coach as part of this process. Hopefully they'll put a veteran bench coach, pair him up with a veteran bench coach to make things a little bit easier on him. Certainly Mickey Calloway was helped by the presence of Jim Riggleman in the second year of his managerial stint. So hopefully the same thing will apply to Carlos. Carlos actually has expressed that he'd like to bring Terry Collins back into the dugout as a bench coach. That would be a very interesting reunion for the two of them. Carlos actually refers to TC as the best manager he's ever played for. So that will be an interesting development should that come to fruition. So what's up next for the Mets? Well, they still haven't formally announced the hiring of Carlos Beltran, and it's already, as I record this, about 8:30 on Friday night. But we are expecting an announcement either tonight or over the weekend, and the Mets are expected to introduce Carlos at Citi Field sometime early next week, probably a press conference on Monday. So look out for that. Hopefully we'll have some reaction after that occurs. Again, if you haven't joined us yet as a Met League member, we'd encourage you to give it a shot. The Mets may not be playing this offseason, but we will be playing. We will be playing and having a lot of fun in the process, engaging in a lot of different competitions, a lot of different discussion. So we hope you guys will be a part of that. There'll be a lot of polls forthcoming about the direction of the team. Obviously, there are a lot of decisions to be made now about the Mets facing Brodie Van Wagenen. The first thing that comes to mind is actually whether or not to extend a qualifying offer to Zach Wheeler. Zach, strangely enough, was the player that came to the Mets in the Carlos Beltran trade all those years ago. So whether or not they will extend a QO to Wheeler, I personally think there's actually no risk in doing that at all. Hopefully they will do that. I wouldn't mind even seeing Wheeler offered a contract and returning to the Mets. I think that would be a solid re-signing if they do get around to that as well. But those are the things that we will be looking for and covering in the coming days and weeks. In the meantime, have a great weekend. Thanks for watching, and let's go Mets!